Sup Shredders, my name is Logan aka Spiderhands and welcome to an SB Reacts where today we're going to be listening through the entirety of an album from an act named Hobokin titled The Rebellion. And if we switch over to here, we've got ourselves the album on the screen here. We'll get that art up for you. This is not the first time that I've listened through Hobokin's work. It's going to be good to check out more though. We're going to be listening through all 15 of these tracks from start till finish and we're going to hear what we think. Starting with Bubble Blowing Babies, let's go.
Keep blowing the bubbly, 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 bubbly bubbles. Told me last week your ass is in trouble, but I don't care. I said make it double. Got new drip and the rain wasn't subtle. Said fuck it all and I splash them in puddles. Tried to catch me, but I left you in rubble. About time I hopped on the shuttle. Got a fresh shave, just a tad bit of stubble. Handing out kisses, the warmest of cuddles. Make way, I'm breaking up the new couple. Object at the wedding to give me a chuckle. Sorry, I'm really a bit of a puzzle. Babe told me I'm more of a struggle. Well, till I pull up to unbuckle. Then down through the end of the tunnel. Shoes full of sand, I got with my shovel. Through the rest of
nice use of bubble sounds.
Banged up to the tips of my knuckles. But it's bath time, I need to stay humble. Keep blowing the bubbly, 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 bubbly bubbles. Bubbly, 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 bubbly. Keep blowing the bubbly, 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 bubbly bubbles. Bubbly, 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 bubbly. Pull up to the edge of your sea. Crystals and diamonds match with capris. Rolling high C, who brought the high C? Damn, was budget that cheap? I guess, who can complain? Vacation was free, the projects, the runways, and me. What a mixture to be in the city. Love the smell of debris. People are dying, the government's lying. Our business is up, population declining. Finding a house is rare for a sighting. Not that inviting, but new bus for biking. Gentrification, make a new nation. Fix neighborhoods, kick out old cases. Bring in new faces, fat wallets and make it. Milk drinking duds who wanna embrace it. Here on my bundle pitch. Study say, yeah. I got the bubbles, bitch. I got it. Yeah, keep blowing the bubbly, 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 bubbly.
I mean, it's catchy with the bubbly.
Bubbly, 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 bubbly. Keep blowing the bubbly, 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 bubbly bubbles. Bubbly, 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 bubbly.
Short and sweet intro, 2 minutes. Yeah, I think the use of the bubbles is a nice bit of Foley in there. Nice work. So this one's a little bit interesting, a little bit mysterious, you know, bubble blowing babies. Maybe this is about Hobokin blowing the bubbles whilst the world burns around them. They talk about the government and gentrification in that second verse, but they talk about themselves, someone saying their ass is in trouble and having to sort of like pack their bags and everything like that and get on the shuttle. So I'm wondering if this is in part their journey, just kind of doing the best they can, blowing bubbles, staying humble despite maybe the wealth or kind of like drip that they end up with, whilst also sort of looking at what the world around them and commenting on the positions of other people. Is that the kind of, is it more of a kind of a sort of a two-sided thing where we compare our situation to others? I'm not sure, but either way, it's an interesting start. One of the things that works well here is just how sort of free-flowing and organic the vocals are here. We've got the bubba de bubba de bubba de kind of thing going on within that chorus section, which is a catchy thing rhythmically. It's kind of playful. It's kind of insinuating that it's not taking itself too seriously. And when Hobokin is, you know, rapping into the mic and communicating with you, it seems polished. It's a comfortable performance from them. They're telling this story without trying to be too sort of like in your face about it. There are some interesting sort of like echoes that are modulated or synthesized as a sublayer, and they have this kind of water feeling to them that works well alongside the bubbles that we hear at certain parts, which I think is really neat. So there's creativity and, you know, attention to detail there. But ultimately, I think that we know maybe not to be necessarily too colorful with our melodies to allow for the rest of the instrumental components on the mix to sort of like have their own space and make sense. And so I think the vocals are, you know, engaging and interesting. The track itself around it, again, not just the bubbles with the kind of going on the sides of the stereo field, which is great from a Foley perspective, but this is very sort of like low-key feeling with the kind of old school kind of video game synths coming in occasionally in the second half. The chorus is there, the percussive elements there not being too sharp, the bass being nice and balanced, and the low end there with a sense of authority without being too much. There's a smoothness with some of the keys as well that I appreciate there. They articulate extensions kind of neatly and modulate through sort of like chords, not chromatically, but like alongside the key sig. And you've got nice call and responses with the vocals as well, which basically tell you, hey, they know how to fill in the space. They know how to sort of switch things up and keep the focal point sort of intriguing without overplaying their hand. Even within a 2-minute 12 track, which is short and sweet as it is, there's a lot to appreciate. We don't overstay our welcome with anything. I think it's as a final note just before we move on, it's about the way that we balance things within the mix from a production perspective. So the vocals, whether they're the backing, call and responses, or the mains or anything like that, you know, they're nicely balanced. The synths, the bass, the keys, the drums, etc. are well sort of positioned as well. We allow ourselves to have occasional filtering, and the panning is sort of like fleshed out neatly around the stereo field. There's dynamic range to this. There's sub-layering of vocal parts showing the depth within the mix. It's nice and low without pumping. So we're off to a good start for the album, which is really what we need with this first track. We've got Take You For A Ride, track number 2. I've heard this one, haven't I? I recognize the song. Love the chord note accenting here, it's quite well done.
I showed up all alone, I'm getting in the zone. Your friends are on their phones, no, 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 no. Do you wanna dance? This night could be enhanced. Let's give you and me a chance, yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's got a great low range.
When they invite me out, I wonder why I leave my
Very easy to get into that mid-range as well. Great filtering here.
Let's have a drink and spark it out. Night is young, what's that about? The bad choices surround us now. Wanna enjoy the night? Well, let's go for a ride. It'd be fun to run a light. Let's tango to this beat. John and Jane, we'd be discreet. You love it bittersweet. Yeah, I'd take you for a ride. Know you feel alright. We're leaving for the night. I take you for a ride. Know you feel alright. We're leaving for the night. I like that you're falling into it. Get back up despite the contusions. This is more than average confusion. Having fun with our drunk delusion.
Got more of those vocal chops on top.
Loving this music, let's not think just fun, let's prove it. Say la vie is news and you'll lose it. Let's get into it. Let's get our bodies moving and keep the party grooving. There is no fun in losing, so keep the car and cruising. Just sing to the music, ignore the OP shooting. The rush is so amusing. Oh God, they're still pursuing. It's Donnie and Bonnie and Donnie and Clyde. I'm taking your shit, I'm taking your bride. Hop in the whip, we're IE. We got one for the wrist and then one for the night. It's too much dip in your chip, we stop you drunk in the pick. On the run, yeah, you know we gotta be double quick. Don't stop till we fall off the edge of a cliff, or we run out of gas and we're forced to submit. Don't know where we'll end up in the morning, but I bet a fun will be on us. Don't stop now, just live in the moment. Moral love for grace and atonement. You can't stop the hell that we're raging. Post our belt, our judgments are jaded. You say that the shit is amazing, so sit back, I'll take you, baby. I take you for a ride.
I mean, it's consistent with the main theme, but they adjust to take things away and bring them back in a way which is satisfying.
I take you for a ride. Know you feel alright. We're leaving for the night.
There's a real starriness to those keys as well, which is kind of pleasant. No, that was beautiful. That's a really pretty song. I do remember this one, and that's a compliment because I don't always remember tracks that I've reviewed, especially if they weren't that recently. So that's awesome, man. That's Hobokin's Take You For A Ride, track number 2 off of the album. So this one, I think it's more about sort of going out and having fun with your friends and just sort of chilling and just appreciating the lifestyle that comes with that. maybe it's after we're finished blowing bubbles, finished sort of like our journey to get to this new location, this destination. We're just trying to sort of like enjoy our life and have fun with it, or, at least appreciating that kind of like nightlife there. Because it does kind of sound like a very funky party song. I think part of what works here is the attention to detail in regards to the different vocal layers. So I think that we had some really cool kind of like modulated sort of like synth coded like vocal parts that sounded very kind of like very sort of like modern, and they worked really neatly in terms of the coloration of the harmonies with the rest of the other elements within the arrangement. And they were a nice foil to Hobokin's lower range, for example, going up to their mid. And we also had like some other sort of like dropped vocals at some parts and some chops up top, but they weren't all at the same time. There was variety in terms of how they were approached and directed, and I think that was really cool. Especially when you're sort of really determined or dedicated to having this idea musically continue throughout a 3.5 minute track, you can't take the listener's attention for granted. So you got to do something in order there to change. And if you don't have any other sort of like instrumental solos or anything like that, the vocals have got to be the thing that adjusts. And that was, again, done well here. I think also it was just the general sort of like focus on the chord note groove here. You're going for a ride, you want it to keep moving, right? So that boom, 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 boom with the mixture of different 8th and 16th note rhythms around it was captivating. There's an inherent slickness as well with some of those synth layers as well, which I appreciate. It had a nice kind of charismatic kind of fizz to it. And it was a different type of bass with this as well, which indicates to me that we are able to change how we sort of approach our bass tones. We don't take the listener's attention for granted with that either. And I've said that a lot, but it's just so important, especially on the second track of an album with 13 to go, that you keep people pulled in. Because often people will listen to the first track and then the second track to hear, oh, this first track was really cool. Is the second track going to be a similar caliber? And if it is, but there's enough sort of like a little bit of a twist to it or something kind of cool or curious, they'll keep listening. If the second track is like with a lot of the albums, for example, from the 90s where the singles are the main focus, you're kind of screwed. So it was well done here. I just think kind of like, again, like using extensions within the harmonies was nice without also not overcomplicating the actual overall chord progressions or arrangement. I think there was enough sort of like variety within the note choices and instrumental layers, as well as the way that we occasionally filtered things as well. Like we had some parts where there was like a more of a low or mid-end resonance because we cut the highs there just to kind of build into stuff. It was neat. We had adjustments, like a little sort of twinkly sort of like key thing going on a bit later on the track as well there. We just changed it. We messed around with the perceptions of sound. And I think that's the final thing I want to talk about today with this track in specific is that they don't allow an idea to sit for too long. You go back to it, but it's like we simply have enough of it to be able to appreciate it. And then, something different happens. And that seems like it's an obvious thing, but it really isn't. It's something that comes with experience. Knowing, okay, I can get away with like 8 or 16 bars of this, and then I have to adjust here and make it a bit sort of like more special or something like that. Or like sort of flip it. And again, I just think that's part of the vocal layers that I discussed earlier, the adjustments of the instrumental parts, because it goes beyond simply having a really proficient technical performance. It's about having a song that sort of like transcends that to be something unique. And I think the uniqueness will come from the album as a whole with this album, with this record, but we'll see how it goes so far. 2 for 2. Very good, no complaints. But again, Stranger Danger, track number 3. I think I'm hearing some similar instruments as well throughout the album, which is really good. Connects the songs. It kind of was reminding me a little bit of that really huge song from Harry Styles for a moment, but there's enough difference now.
On your
Oh.
Aphrodite, son, I'm your mischief and overdose. Arrows piercing through your heart, I'll kiss you on your Cupid's bow. Time will freeze, the gods will scream, I'm just a deviation. But if you don't move, then I guess that proves that I'm not the only villain. You got someone that you love, but now I'm your new frustration. You gave me one slice of your heart, I took that as an invitation. You claim that angel on your shoulder, it should love you or maintain her. But if this devil shoots his bullet through, I'll give you some stranger danger. You can't control that you want it, you lost the fight, and you know it. Gods won't approve of my
Nice to have that danger alarm over top.
destiny fell too deep in the moment you leaned in, even with time frozen. Gods won't approve of this course you take, but who cares, we'll just ignore it. You had someone that you love, but now I'm your new temptation. You gave me one half of your heart, I took that invitation. You claim that angel on your shoulder was your love that you'd maintain her. But now this devil has took control, and you feel that stranger danger. I'll be your stranger danger. I'll be your stranger danger. Be that stranger.
Okay, good. I'm glad that we're switching things up now. The 3-minute mark is really... to kind of distort it like that is an interesting tone. A little bit of kind of edge to it. Oh, having a fade out 20 seconds before the end. That's kind of it's kind of interesting. So that was interesting. It seems like that one is more about someone who is like kind of the third wheel and they're a temptation. And they've got a piece of the person's heart, but they treat it like an invitation. And they got the angel and devil on the shoulder. Like, the imagery is very easy to follow along with. And that's one of the things I think I'm just going to sort of say out the bat. I appreciate that it's fairly, well, apart from Bubble Blowing Babies, where I was still kind of like still thinking about that one. But I kind of understand the crux of these Sec 2 and 3. You know, I think with Bubble Blowing Babies, if I had a bit more time with it, just sort of think it over, I'd probably be fine. And I'm probably overthinking it, ironically. But part of it is just how kind of like with the Stranger Danger hook line, the danger being repeated like an alarm bell. I think that's really clever. It not only communicates what it's about really, really effectively, but it also doesn't let you forget it, and it uses it as a sort of a really satisfying rhythmical device throughout, especially as it layers over top of other vocals later in the track. I think also it's kind of it's a quirky decision to have that sense of smoothness with the hi-hats, you know, the drum kit with the eighth note grooves there, that kind of pace there. I appreciated the distortion on the vocals near the end, offering a bit of edge. I potentially would have liked a bit more edge to this to kind of show a bit more danger instrumentally to go alongside the alarm bells. But I also kind of think that maybe we're trying to create music where we're not trying to include too many of those harsh textures, which is totally fine, you know. And you don't have to be as literal or on the nose about it. And also simply, I don't know how much you would have needed to add in terms of heaviness in order to make that work, you know. Some musicians will do variety box albums where they'll have a lot of different genres. There are similarities with the approach of certain instruments within this track that I'm starting to sort of get a feel for, and I think that that's a really positive thing for the album. But I suppose I think that almost having a lack of edge until the last part almost seems like you've been lulled into a false sense of security before something sort of terrible occurs. I think if there was any sort of like constructive critique I could offer with this, I think that we could have maybe had more instrumentally as the track went through. Like, I was listening through it near the end, and I thought it could be cool to have like a kind of You could have had like an additional sort of lead instrument on the end there. If you're gonna have distortion with the vocals, you could have had something kind of like doing octaves on top of pitch, like da 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 da, or something like that, kind of like just to kind of add a sense of like an alternate lead to maybe go on top of the vocals at that part, to maybe like be a bit more sort of like colorful alongside the distorted vocals. That went on a similar rhythm to the drum parts there, just to add a bit more kind of flavor to the end part. But I feel like with the vocals as a focal point and with no sort of like main like lead elements, it's okay. It's totally fine. When you get to the sort of 3.5 minute mark of a track or a 3 minute mark, you need to sort of like do something differently to keep people's sort of like attention. And I'm glad that we knew to switch up the tone of the vocals there. It makes me wonder whether we will have solo elements from other instruments within this album. It can be cool to have them occasionally. I just feel like this could have been a track where you could have had like an additional lead element at the end there to go alongside the vocals. But aside from that, it's awesome. It's really cool. I've got track number 34 now, Stockholm. Beautiful pads. Great use of falsetto as well. Interesting to use this range here.
Taking my body into true night in heaven, a true transcending, yeah. By the gods, you know that I'm begging, but want me. I remember you dragging my body through the rocks and the pebbles, eh. In a fright, you looked in my eyes, so you got me. I think we met 7 years ago while I was on vacation, yeah, you already know. You found me in a vulnerable state, oh, you got me. I think we met 7 years ago while I was on vacation, yeah, you already know. Since that day till this day, oh, you got me. Stuck in a box, my mind's a paradox, I don't know where to go. You threaten my life, I'm running out of time, please leave me alone. I beg to be released, I can't find the keys, but the word says yet to show. Think that it's me, as scary as it seems, I don't wanna be let go.
Neat little fill there.
Taking my body into true night in heaven. By the gods, you know that I'm begging, oh. I remember you taking my body into true night in heaven, a true transcending, yeah. By the gods, you know that I'm begging, but what me?
Oh, chopping of vocals, nice.
You got me. I remember you taking my body into true night in heaven, a true transcending, yeah. By the gods, you know that I'm begging, but what me?
And then it just stops immediately. That's actually a cool little decision there. And so yeah, we have Stockholm. Don't know if it's Stockholm or Stockholm Syndrome. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure which to interpret from that. At face value, I would say because of the need of this person, not wanting them to go, etc., we could be talking about someone with Stockholm syndrome. Maybe it was their previous sort of situation or relationship that they were in. Maybe it's in relation to bubble blowing babies, where they talked about sort of like digging themselves into a hole or something like that, or kind of like getting stuck into things, digging deeper to the end of the tunnel. I'm not sure, and the person is dragging them out of that. It's an intriguing sort of decision we've made here. One of the things that works about this is how dreamy it is and how pleasant it is to listen to. There's this kind of whale call thing going on one side of the headphones for a lot of it, which is like and mesmerizing. It's such a beautiful sound. And it goes well alongside some of the main and sort of falsetto parts that Hobokin is doing on the mic there. It's just a really beautiful song to listen to. The synth pads that we have as well, they glisten in the ether, and it's sort of meant to sort of like kind of send you through it. And you've got these kind of boom, 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 kind of these arpeggios or melodies going on the side as well. And the sub layers, everything's gorgeous sounding. And maybe it's part of the false sense of security or simply the feeling of being with this person and how they make you feel. That's what it's supposed to represent. I mean, the start of the track begins with absolutely no drums, if I'm not mistaken. You've just got this kind of lo-fi sort of synthwave-ish kind of like ingredients within a mix, and it's just so gentle. Like we're coming into it after Stranger Danger with like a measure of wanting to sort of rely on this person to sort of stay with us. And, you know, I think that's a fantastic choice there. So that's one of the things that works well. It works well about this, even if it's like a literal thing or ironic in terms of the being in against a sense of Stockholm syndrome. I'm not sure, but like either way, the drums within this are fantastic. I like some of the little fills we have, and the reason that that's a thing worth mentioning is that drum fills are not to be taken for granted, especially within like, you know, like genres like pop or R&B or anything like that. You don't take for granted that there's going to be a transitory device. You simply just assume, hey, there's going to be a beat. And there might be a bit of a tail, but it might be just a variation of the kick or the snare or the clicks or something like that. But to have some sort of 80s kind of, again, synthwave kind of 80s sort of drum toms and some electric parts going into like some more sort of like low tempo stuff or low intensity parts is just really cool. And it's nice to have not just a kind of generic kind of consistent 8th or 16th. There's like little rests and adjustments there to kind of keep it sort of entrancing. And like there's an accenting to the kicks and the snares with the hi-hats being relatively subtle within the mix. The toms being sort of like pervasive when they were required. But I think in terms of the final thing I appreciate about this, it's that we allow the other synth and bass and sort of like vocal elements to sit on their own sometimes. We're not reliant on the percussion to keep us moving through this track, unlike Take You for a Ride, where we're moving forward because we're having that ride, you know. It makes sense to sort of kind of start with this a little bit, you know, like someone's dragging you through like the rocks and the people are trying to like save you or however else, like it's not a consistent thing there. So I think that it allows for more variety structurally within a track, but it also just makes for a nice sort of bit of contrast to previous songs. So it's good. I think Stockholm is one of my favorite tracks off of the album so far, alongside Take You for a Ride. We got Three's a Crowd, track number 5 today.
You know I've got my muses. Ava, Louie, and Michael will do it. John and Jane, I like my chooses. Kate and Johnny, Aphrodite and juicing. Cause I always cover bases. Let's have an expensive taste test. Lemon gin to keep it basic. Go flambe that Phoenix cupcake. In Dubai, oh Dios mio. I can say I like this trio. Menage a trois, let's seal the deal. Got my hands, give me something to feel. Want your hands exploring my skin like it's an exotic island. Tropical winds that's so enticing. You like this danger and the violence. You like this boom, exciting.
Nice bit of vocal fry there, nice.
We shake this room, surprising boom, make you think boom. Brought your plane down to its doom. Cause your crisis, just call me ISIS. Rev that engine, I'll be your pilot. Treasure you, I'll be your pirate. Roughed up like we caused a riot. Like the way that I worded. Give you that blend, I'll mix and stir it. Cinnamon, vanilla excursion. Now add the sugar, I'll be your third. Britney said if you seek Amy. Justin stayed and we got filthy. Like Christina, we get dirty. Clubhouse playmates, choose your journey. Pulled up in a brand new whip. Last year went so hard you bent. Down to party, like it better. When three's a crowd. When three's a crowd. Make it loud when three's a crowd. Make it loud, exert that sound. Let's take supply me with your creation. Don't mind if we keep it brazen. Dirty dancing in the basement. Track.
It's very progressive in it. It's got an interesting kind of like exploratory, experimental sound to it.
Pace, just keep it steady. Picture so fine, should call you Getty.
Kind of dissonance from that synth in the background go between those two modulations.
Ready, like your spice so caliente. Dressed up in that savage Fenty cake by the pound. Well, we've got plenty. Dialed up classy, keep it pretty. I used to take precautions as I've grown too exhausted. With my mind purposely lost it. By design, if I recalled it. Trying to have fun with my 20s. The roaring kind, Emerald City. Tap dance, jiving, keep on spinning. Supply your night, I'm your amenity. So I'll ball out like I'm Gatsby. Clothes in shreds, use that confetti. Skin on skin, contact is heavy. Green light, go across that jetty. But don't forget that time is fading. Gatsby died, so we can't waste it. Before this whole function gets raided, let's have some fun, soberly wasted. Like we pulled up in a brand new whip. Last shit went so hard, you bet. Down to party like it better. When three's a crowd. When three's a crowd. Make it loud. When three's a crowd. Make it loud. Exert that sound. Let's take it down, down, down.
Okay, that was interesting. I like a little kind of record stop at the end. Three's a crowd. I get the impression it's about there being a real sort of like sexual attraction and sort of connection between the two that are speaking, and just sort of trying to remove that third person, whether it's a mention of stranger danger there, we're really sort of committing to that person at that point there. It's, you know, it's raw, it's raunchy. You know, there's a bit of edge to the vocals as well. So like one of the things I think's done well here is that we have that vocal fry with the whip, you know, like we kind of like a bit of kind of grunt and grizzle to it. And it just adds a bit of kind of edge to it that I think has been missing for a lot of the album. Not at a detriment, but just simply there's this further range that we explore, and I like the fact that we're messing with that. Lots of very sort of like vocal modulated layers, like going down the octave to like, that kind of like range there. As well as kind of like being a bit more sort of like expressive with like the kind of like softer vocals occasionally. But just the kind of like the kind of spoken rapped kind of parts there, or spoken sung parts, it's effective because it's more like a conversation that you're having with that person. It, you know, resonates nicely with the kind of thing that's going on in the background for a lot of it, adding a bit of kind of dissonance and uncertainty to the piece in general, a bit of tension there. Almost like there's like, and again, it's just the part of another thing I think works is that there's just this overall tension through the track, Three's a Crowd, where you're discussing all the things you want to do with this person, but you're also unhappy with the fact that there's another person involved, and you just want them to get out of there. You just want them to leave. And so you've got the sound of the car revving up, the Foley, you're talking about getting like loud and going down, 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 etc. Sort of like force them out, you know, take control of the situation. And I think the dissonance from the shows there's a bit of aggression or sort of like you want to make that change there. Like the use of the kind of orchestral kind of a cinematic, like boom, those drums as well, and the accent of like the boom and everything like that is very intense there. There's accents to sort of like drive and sort of push through and sort of catch the listener's attention whilst showing a sense of force and pressure, like you're pushing against this other person to get them out with the music. And there's also like a heavy bass response, I think, to capitalize on the intensity of some of the vocal parts there. It's just sort of like very sort of like feral and aggressive, and it wants you to leave, etc. And I think that that's impressive from a musical perspective, to be able to sort of like get those elements together to make it work like that, because it's basically working with one main root note the entire time. It doesn't necessarily go to another chord progression. There's no adjustments in that. It's the use of the different instrumental sort of like layerings and textures and stuff like that, as well as the way we adjust the vocals and their various sort of like registers to sort of make it happen and sort of create that the ambience atmosphere that we need. And there's also these interesting sort of other bits of Foley, not just with the cars, but like this like sort of like cashier sounds, like ding kind of sounds as we go, and like filtered, and there's like these kind of scratchy kind of elements there. And I think that's more of a comment on the production. So it's not just that we can record our instruments well. It's not like just that we can sort of rap or sort of sing or sort of communicate well. It's that we also know how to adjust tones and post in order to produce and make an album that's interesting. And I feel like the Three's a Crowd is another really solid effort in this. I think it has its own sort of flavor and sort of journey it wants to go on there, but it also works well with other tracks within the album. It's a standalone. But it's also, I think part of why I like it is because there's a bit of darkness to it as well. There's a bit of kind of like you want to grit your teeth and sort of punch the person, sort of boot them out. That's more of a personal preference than anything else. But regardless, there's an innate sort of musicality to it. And, we're doing well so far. Third of the way through the album. We got Puppets, track number 6. We're working with triplets or swing.
It's hard, all I wanna do is talk to someone, be involved. You kick me to the side and moved on. I wanna cry, express my compressed desolation. I need renovation to cover my wastelands. Tears trailing down my face. You don't text to say hey or ask about my day. And yeah, I noticed the change. And then ignored the pain. Perception, I want an illusion. I wanna look perfect, I wanna lie. You maybe a little white wine. I want you to pretend, I want them to believe. Can you follow me? Can you start to believe? Can you make me lose my mind inside this hell they call it paradise? And everything else that you lose when you let snake eyes. Like getting jumped by the neighborhood guys that steal your shoes, give a bruise, art hole, then call your muse. Spread your wings now, run, you're the prey. This
kinda straight 4-4.
Wait, do you have something to say? Sorry, the world doesn't need more crap on its tray. It doesn't care if it is foul play. Alright, okay, but there's consequences if you disobey. So just don't overstep the line and maybe you'll survive the day. Maybe you can hide away. Maybe forget that we're dying from these twisted games that leave you mentally insane. I coil under your wing, I wanna pull the first string. The puppeteer, the master god of everything that walks around here. The babies and deer, I'll tell you now that I'm being sincere. I'm all ears, I like to hear the liberation from our decades in the basement. Is all the pain from the false smiles that they carved into our faces. Object, throw you to the court of public opinion, where the perjury will paint you the villain. They'll strip away your honor and pride with signed papers. You know they don't want you to speak, free think, or do anything independently. You've gotta be a part of the hive. Give a shimmy and jive when they say you've gotta dance for your life. And honestly, if you're not prepared to
I like the little guitar in the background though. That's a cool riff.
You know, the king's court just ordered a fool, and as it look, I think the job awaits you. So spread your wings now, run, you're the prey. This habitat was molded from clay. Wait, do you have something to say? Sorry, the world doesn't need more crap on its tray. It doesn't care if it is foul play. Alright, okay, but there's consequences if you disobey. So just don't overstep the line and maybe you'll survive the day. Maybe you can hide away. Maybe forget that we're dying from these twisted games that leave you mentally insane.
So I think that Puppets is following on from the rest of the tracks, where basically, there is someone who is pulling the strings and the other person is kind of coiling underneath to try and kind of have a part in that, to kind of mess with everyone else around them. It's basically about the interpersonal relationships we have and trying to sort of like cope with our own feelings and thoughts and problems within the grander sort of expanse of the world and context, and sort of like, just trying to sort of like make our way through it. But also about the vulnerability, I suppose, being shown from being kicked aside and kind of like discarded and discarded. Maybe it is following on from Stockholm and Three's a Crowd in the sense that this is the person that was not included within it. And basically now they're being told, no one needs your crap, we've used you, now move on, etc. Now we're going to move on. And you can understand in a sense why that would be extremely hurtful to Hobokin if they're the person involved, or if, it's brutal. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people who can kind of relate to that as a subject matter, And I think that it's good to sort of open ourselves up. That's something I want to sort of talk about there. I think that it's great that we're opening ourselves up and showing vulnerability. And I know that seems like an obvious thing with music, but it is really not. It needs to first of all be done authentically. You can't just pretend that you're having problems. And they've also got to be problems which, in terms of sort of excessive music, where like people can understand what the problems are, but also respect why you're having those problems in a weird way. Like anyone can write a song about their problems, but it's got to be done in a way where the people want to sort of like hear it, and it also sort of relates to them. So I think that it was communicated well, but there are also some really sort of neat decisions made in terms of, for example, the ending kind of like choruses, and the fact that we had like the kind of more kind of rougher, kind of grittier vocal style in that lower range, but the upper kind of like pitch, upper octave parts there kind of showing a sense of desperation in the background there, it harmonizing on top of that. It's an interesting sort of like bit of drama within the piece there, you know, which we're sounding, there's a sense of desperation combined with like the kind of sort of thuggishness of the brutality of it. And there's also like moments where you hear Hobokin, they're struggling to get the words out. It's a very intense experience there. It's not nearly as constrained as some of the other tracks within this album, and I think that that's important because if you don't allow yourself to have the flexibility of using your voice to sort of go for a wide audience, then it can be really difficult to do it. You need to be able to sort of like tell people what's going on the way they'll care about. So that's done well here. I think another thing that's good here is the sense of sort of like flavor with the flamenco sort of like steel string guitars there, as well as the lead guitar sort of solos in the background there. I mean, I remember mentioning earlier that it would have been cool to have some like instrumental lead sections in certain places. But here we have a guitar solo underneath as a sub layer, which is quite intricate, you know. Interesting use of sort of like hammer-ons and pull-offs and stuff like that. It was a really cool sort of like kind of idea melodically in the background there, which almost shows this sort of a wistful sort of self-awareness, like all the thoughts going around our head, kind of mourning our loss in a sense. And the use of the brass as well matches out in the upper range there, almost like a curtain call, like a last call, etc. We're kind of popping off as like the final march, you know. And then you've got the bass and the drums, sort of very authoritative in the low end there, being a nice sort of ground bed for those brass and the string sections, and you know, like it bum, 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 those kind of interesting sort of plucked elements that play a certain melody that acts as a nice sort of like transition between halves of a part or like between sections. It signals that you go into a new part, whilst having a solid sense of sort of like groove within the eighths, quarters, and sixteenths. But I think also rhythmically, what I want to sort of touch on is the fact that we're exploring our sort of like swing and straight 4/4. So in this piece, the start of the track, bum, 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 almost like an accordion-esque kind of thing going on there. 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 into. You've got triplets with rests in the middle, which is a swing groove. But then, like, as we go into the build, into the bridge of the chorus or something like that, we switch up to a straight 4 with don't. Yeah, we have occasional triplets within that part, but it's not like the fundamental groove of it is triplets. It goes to straight 4/4. And for Hobokin to be able to go between those main sort of swing and straight 4/4 grooves there is awesome. It's just a nice way to sort of change up a piece there and almost make it a little bit less of a dance and more of a sort of a march forward there. Almost like we gain self-awareness and we know that we can't go back to how things used to sort of jump before, like we're not jumping for the strings. And maybe it is referring to the strings in the first part, and then the second part is becoming the sort of the puppet master, the god, etc. There's a world that's being constructed here, and I'm all for it. And I think that, you know, we clearly know what we're doing. It'll be interesting to see how the rest of the album pans out. We got Breaking Down, track number 7.
I hear the screeching, can't stop thinking that it's taking me out.
I've heard this one too.
Breathing, endless feeling, evaporating my sound. I feel so muted, I'm deluded.
I know this one.
It's fade away now, and it's just breaking, feel it breaking. Ooh, it's breaking me down. I hear the screeching, can't stop thinking that it's taking me out. I hear my breathing, endless feeling, evaporating my sound.
And then the chops on the side are a really nice touch.
Colors fade away now, and it's just breaking, feel it breaking. Ooh, it's breaking me down, and it's just breaking me down. The ground concaves me to my grave till there's just no digging out. And I'll just die atop this hill, silently screaming its sound. And I'm just searching for the answers, can you come save me now? Oh, it creeps up like darkest deadlights on a lone night. Oh, it hits me like a deer in headlights, even when there's foresight. I can't help thinking there's a reason, changing colors every season, but nothing stays the same except the poison in my brain. I fall collapse into depletion till nothing left but pieces. Lock me up for treason. I've been right here this station. Can't stop thinking that it's taking me out.
No, it works.
Endless feeling evaporating my sound. I feel so muted, I'm deluded. Colors fade away now, and it's just breaking. Feel it breaking. Ooh, it's breaking me down.
Oh, automation with the panning, nice.
Stop thinking that it's taking me out. I hear my breathing, endless feeling evaporating my sound.
When it's a chorus, it's very lush, isn't it?
Colors fade away now, and it's just breaking. Feel it breaking. Ooh, it's breaking me down, and it's just breaking, breaking, breaking me down, breaking, breaking, breaking me down, breaking me down, down.
No, I think that's really well done. So, by the way, just before we go any further, I know I've put this in the title card, but I hadn't been aware of this at the time of reviewing. I just looked through the lyrics really quickly. This features Ethan Marc. So this is Hobokin and Ethan Marc. This track breaking down, I think Ethan was in the interlude there just before the final chorus. So I think that this is a really pretty song. Part of what works is that you have a different vocalist involved. So it's not that I wouldn't want Hobokin to do all the tracks by themselves, because they can sing and they're interesting to listen to. I like hearing them out. It's that having a featured vocalist just add a different sort of texture and timbre on the mic can just be a little bit of variety to a track, just to kind of help it pop off a little bit. There can be a little bit of kind of extra kind of sparkle and pizzazz to it. It's still clearly Hobokin's song with them being the primary feature, but to have Ethan kind of put their distinctive kind of like sound in it was a nice bit of variety within this album, and I think that it worked well for the track. They mashed well, they had chemistry there. I think that it's a song about kind of losing yourselves because of what's been happening with all the manipulation and all the stuff going on with our interpersonal relationships mentioned previously within the album, which makes a lot of sense. It's enough to sort of like fry anyone's mind, the kind of stuff that they've been discussing here. It sounds like an incredibly toxic situation that's just been really difficult to deal with, and I'm genuinely sorry that they had to go through it. But it's still nonetheless a story that I think, again, people are going to relate to. I feel like it will be a valuable listen regardless because of that. But I think part of what also works so well here is simply that there is just a really cool vocal chop idea on one of the sides of the stereo field, and up an octave from that. And it's just a really neat sound. It's just a nice sort of satisfying loop that it goes through. And it meshes nicely on top of what Hobokin is doing in the choruses, and it just fills out the stereo field with frequency spectrum, should I say, because it has those higher chops and then Hobokin here, and then the lower range is a lot of sort of the bass and drum elements there. And the reason that's important is that it's one of the easiest ways to make a chorus sound bigger. You might have the verse being a little more sort of like low-key without those upper elements, and then you kind of bring the chorus and everything's massive because of how you stack those layers on top. It's just songwriting 101 here, but it's done really neatly. I think there's also this kind of sort of somber tone to it throughout there, with a lot of those kind of fizzy low end kind of like synth basses, the drums with the kind of like nice sort of rounded tone to them without too much sort of like hiss and edge to them. They're punchy, they're sidechained, but they're not overdoing that there. And I think that the coloration with the vocal melodies, in addition to the chops on top, allows for us to not need a particularly complicated harmonic arrangement with the instrumental parts and the backing. It's just things do their different roles, and it's satisfying. And I think that like there are some moments as well, just to sort of like mention this, such as in like around the 2-minute 10 mark, where there's like kind of like almost sort of sing stringish kind of tone there, which is just a really sort of pleasant juxtaposition to in terms of ambience to the sort of like the atheist kind of like syncopated stuff occasionally that we had beforehand. Just allowing to sort of like kind of breathe, almost like we're trying to breathe for air there, is really kind of like fascinating. And we have little transitional devices such as the backing vocals and like risers there. You know, we're putting all the bits of air candy in as required in order to keep this track popping off throughout. And this is why I feel like it's just a really kind of like competent single. There is no points where we're unsure of where we're going there. None of the transitions are taken for granted. Again, we have a feature with Ethan, so there's a bit more sort of like change there and sort of like that bit of extra kind of zazz in regards to the accompaniment. It's one of the more sort of complete sounding tracks on this album. It does tie into a lot of the subject matter earlier in the album quite reasonably, as well as being sort of like competent on its own. You know, you can kind of figure out in isolation what makes sense. So I feel like it's just a great addition to the album, and I look forward to hearing more. Here we go. Everyone Needs a Break, and then our final track for today, because I'm going to take a break for a bit just so I keep my batteries recharged, is Everybody Needs a Break. And then we just got one more track for this listening section just so that I keep my batteries charged, as Everybody Needs a Break. Great use of wind.
Everybody needs a break sometimes. Everybody needs a break in life. Some leave what they love behind. Are you feeling empty? Do you almost? Oh, I'm trying to find a way. I wanna smile today. You see me run for miles away, and I'm no stranger to be a stranger. The lost child, the black sheep, the mistake you regretted to keep. I'm trying to hide my pain. I wanna go astray. You see me fade into the grave. Are you feeling empty? Do you almost? Oh, I'm trying to find my way. I'm trying to hide my pain, but I'm just another proof of shame. You needed the break, so you stepped on the brakes, told me to get out, and you went on your way. You needed the break, so you told me to stay, put the car in drive and left me behind.
Interesting use of gun shells there.
Are you feeling empty? Do you almost miss me? Everybody needs a break sometimes. Everybody needs a break in life. Some leave what they love behind. Everybody needs a break sometimes. Everybody needs a break in life. Some leave what they love behind.
It's easy to nod your head along to.
Are you feeling empty? Some leave what they love behind, and you left me.
Brutal. We're gonna talk about. Man, it's heavy stuff. So this one is a sad song. Like, if I'm honest, it really is the halfway point of the album after breaking down, and we really do feel like we've hit a low point here, discussing how we just feel like a mistake, something they've left behind. We've had the anger going through the stages of grief, and now we're sort of potentially with the next track being happier now. It could be them if we're asking if they're happier. I'm not sure, but either way, we'll find out in the next session. But I feel bad for him. I feel bad for Hobokin at this point. It's a very sentimental track. The way that it's sung, you feel it's very easy to feel sympathetic for what Hobokin has gone through, and I think that that's an important thing within an album. If you're going through a journey through their experience, you need to hear this and go, okay, they've had a really rough time. I understand initially they were talking about their sort of like the way they were living their life and things that they've just gone through hell, and now they're just in a situation where they've really just been smacked around quite a bit and they need a hand up. You don't always get that with albums. You don't always get that. Sometimes you hear people talking and you just don't care. But with this one, it's expressed in a way that, again, seems quite organic and authentic. You know, it doesn't seem like they're trying to sort of trick you into believing it. It's a very sort of like therapeutic, calm track where they don't oversell the sadness that they feel either. You can just hear that they're going through it. It seems sincere without being too much. And you know, when you go too far, it just kind of sounds tacky, right? I think another thing that works really neatly here is the piano. The piano is such a phenomenal accompaniment, and the minimalism in terms of especially the intro part where there's just those two notes changing with that kind of one sort of like anchor note, unison note in the upper end. It's serene, but it illustrates a sense of emptiness. And I think the use of the wind foley alongside the keys is really poignant because it's saying, oh, I'm looking at this sort of crevasse that's opened up within myself, this sort of emptiness, and I'm struggling with it. And it does kind of sound cold as well, like the Arctic winds. And you know, you've got a nice sense of polish with a lot of those kind of bass and drum elements, but the tempo of the track is not quick. It's a very kind of like a solemn walk through their situation, with Hobokin leading you by the hand or by their words. And it's easy to listen to, but you do understand the weight. And there are, again, these like vocal takes on the side there, which I think is a production thing as much as the wind there, where it's a simpler track compositionally than other tracks such as Three's a Crowd, where it's brutal. Hobokin is so good at, for the most part at least, of creating these environments within tracks where it's not a variety box thing like really intense different genres. They just know how to choose sounds and instruments that will create the environment they need to tell their story in a way which still sounds consistent within the album, that gives them a foundation to speak their truth on. It just doesn't feel divorced from everything else. It's a logical conclusion, I suppose, at the halfway point. And for everything to sound musical there is great, you know. They clearly understand what they're doing. The thoughts in the background of the vocal echoes, the thoughts going through the head, it's just really neat stuff. And then as things go down near the end, you just got the kind of left me part kind of repeating and echoing, and then it's just finished. So honestly, it's been a really fantastic album so far. Again, I'm going to take a little break and be back into it in a moment. But I'm just thankful that this has gone well, because again, you never know going into an album whether it's going to be a good time. I have listened to Hobokin's music in the past, and I've enjoyed my time with it. It's just great to be able to continue that enjoyment. So see you soon. And so we continue with the second session now. I've got Happier Now. Let's do it. Let's go. It's nice to return to it.
And I don't feel happier now. And you look like you're just happier now. How should I feel if you're with someone else? And then he makes you smile and I'm all lost there from somewhere else. And now I break down slowly.
Great tone to those 808s.
But then you kick me. You knew I was already weak. How could you find someone
Adjustment with the percussion, nice.
to please me within a week? After you broke the promise that put us here like strays in the street. My engraved on the concrete. My breath short and it's hard to breathe. My tears, puddles that cover me. My heart shattered and incomplete. Why'd you do this to me? I can't be suspicious. You'll call me
Great to have alternative percussion with the claps, you know.
picking at the thoughts inside my brain. Maybe it might just be me. I just don't feel the same. I wanna trust you, but trust is just a losing game. But I don't feel happier now. While you look like you're just happier now. How should I feel?
And the guitarists in the background as well are quite neatly structured and textured,
He just makes you smile while I'm
being a different rhythm to other parts.
from somewhere else. Did it make you happy to be with somebody else? Did it make you happy to leave me up on that shelf? Did it make you happy to lose my trust and fail? Did it make you happier? And now I break down, just broken at the knees, and still you kick me, knowing I was already weak. How could you lie to me, darling? You
I don't know if I'm necessarily digging the ping pong delay, although the quick echo we've got to those snares in certain parts, but
me, content with lies. It seems you're happier lying, but I can't show nowhere. No, I'll just look insane. You got a knack for dissecting the thoughts inside my brain.
I mean, there's an intricacy to the percussion though, for sure.
I just don't feel the same. I wanna trust you, but trust is just a losing game.
Breakdown, halftime with guitar solo, nice.
Knowing I was already weak, how could you lie to me? Darling, you lied to me. I tried to trust you, but trust is just gone.
And so that was track number 9, Happier Now. Now, I think that this track is discussing Hobokin watching another, you know, sort of realizing they just have the same connection and dealing with how bittersweet it is when you're separated from someone to sort of watch you realize that you were not necessarily a particularly positive influence in life, or just realizing that even without you there, that they've moved on, they've continued. And it's clear that this has completely devastated them from this track. You know, we have a wide range of emotions in previous parts, but here it seems like Hobokin is distraught. And when you think about the context of everything that's sort of been discussed within the earlier parts of this album, it makes complete sense, you know. So I understand why we're feeling the way we are and how we're doing it. And at this halfway point of the album, you know, we've got that additional context there. So I think this is like a clear example of why some tracks work better than others as singles. I think here this is more a song that needed the album to be able to sort of like have its placement. That isn't to say that it's a lesser song by any means. In fact, I think there's a lot to appreciate here. You know, at 4 minutes 05, it's clear that we've done one of the things I really appreciate, which is have an alternate lead here. That guitar solo at the end was really adeptly handled. It was well played there. We explored the pentatonic and scale shapes really neatly of the surrounding chords and harmonies. And it was just great to also have that feature continuous onto the final outro chorus. I think that it was great to have the vocals and the leads to come together like that. It was just a really smart decision. Going halftime in that part as well allows it to sort of feel a bit more segmented and deliberate. And so you're left with a feeling of, hey, you know, we've had a lot of context. We've sort of heard Hobokin out at this point. And to be fair, like, there's a lot of weight to what we're discussing there. To have a bit of kind of like lightness to the guitar, despite the mid-range resonance is welcome. You know, it's not that I don't like hearing about this, but it's just nice to have different ways of telling the story. And so structurally, I think from the moment you go, bow, 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 like the way it comes in, just structurally, it's very effective as well. At 4 minutes 05, you can't take the listener's attention for granted. There's like a 2 to 4 minute sweet spot with music where if it's less than 2 minutes, you might be missing some context, some valuable context within a piece. Whereas if it's more than 4 minutes, you've really got to make sure that you keep enough in the variety in there compositionally, sort of performatively, etc., in order to keep someone intrigued. And I think here it wasn't just that we had that guitar solo at the end. There was also a range of different ways that we implemented the vocal parts with sort of mains inside and sort of like double tracked and altered vocals. We had some interesting decisions with the drum parts as well here, with some really cool sort of slick kick sort of like cymbal, as well as some slices and claps, which was just a nice sort of different sound there, almost like we're kind of clapping in time as we sort of slowly accept the kind of situation that we're in. But those drum fills with the speed of them was really neat as well. They worked well with the kind of rocky tone of the guitars, with the kind of distortion and kind of like the glow of those there. There's a bit of angst and grit to the tones, especially when those 808s came in the low end there, kind of rounding things out. But it's okay. Like there was enough variety across the drum parts and guitar parts again to flesh out this track structurally with various verse and chorus parts. And I think that it was just sensible, the transitions there. And there's like low clicky hi-hats and variations of 8s and 16ths with the hi-hat patterns as well, with the vocals still being the main focal point. Any sort of like guitar arpeggios or side leads or sub leads, etc., going on the side, surrounding you in the headphones. Again, like really sensible decisions here to make this track bigger than it is. And so you get to this part of the album now, and you risk repeating yourself. It's not that I'm deliberately trying to find different stuff each time. It's just that each of these tracks had 2 or 3 things in it that has been sort of semi-unique to it. To appreciate on top of the other things. I think with Happier Now, you're left in a position where you're kind of wondering where they're going to go, whether they're going to heal from this and try and find some sort of like movement beyond the situation they're in, or whether it's just going to get worse. And with a title like The Rebellion as the album art, you're kind of thinking, oh, could things go worse than this, or are we rebelling against our own sort of like feeling of helplessness? But the breezy nature of the extended chords within the harmonies within this track, combined with like the angst of the vocals, I think, and some of the clear difficulties we're sort of discussing, which I think a lot of people are going to be related to, there's just a nice sort of tonal equilibrium established between the parts in the mix. And I'm thankful for the fact that we managed to work that out and put that in this piece. So, it's good to get back into it. Because we got track number 10, Resent. Again, great use of, chops and keys. Nice.
I still can't comprehend how you would do this to me. I'm feeling pretty bitter about the company that you keep. You have me falling slowly. My head is stuck in my dreams, but in reality, there's no commitment that you could keep. The cuts that you left gave me deep to the bone.
Triplets.
It hurts a lot. The trust that you broke, can't believe you, I won't. A broken lock. The lies that you told, so blatant and cold. You teach your what? And I know I should know that we all fall and we say that we won't. I still can't imagine how you could do this to me. I'm feeling pretty bitter about the dirt that you threw on me. You had me falling slowly, was ready to take the leap, but at the end of it, you let me hit the ragged concrete.
It's interesting to have the female vocals with this, almost like it's both perspectives potentially. I'm not sure.
Blissful silence of when the world faded here. A kiss for the moment that you made it clear. The way that you made it sound so sincere to just disappear. You know, it hurts a lot. I think I'd rather take the gunshot. Lose myself in the paradox of unfinished thoughts. I'd take that loss. You'll get cold for that blackened heart. Cross around your soulless body like sharks. And the myths made tragedies look like art. One for the heart and a false new start. I don't know where I should go. I just wanna be alone. My eyes are now a weeping willow. All I see is blue monochrome. Your core is cold.
Very different track to Happier Now. I kind of dig the confidence to be able to have. I mean, I'm going to talk about this in a moment. But I love the confidence of being able to have those extended intros and the outros like that. But we'll talk about it in a moment. So I think that Resent is still following on from Happier Now. We've noticed that they're happy, and we're now in a position where we're looking at who they are as a human being and kind of trying to understand them for who they actually are outside of the rose tinted spectacles. Blue monochrome. Their core is cold. And it's a harsh reality that sometimes we do learn the truth about people when we get that distance. And that can be forced on us. And sometimes it's a blessing in disguise, although it feels like you're being cut with a knife. And we talk about gunshots, and I'm not sure how to interpret that necessarily. But either way, just the pain that's been caused as we identify who this person really is and how we resent them, I suppose. The core of that resentment. It's an interesting adaptation to it. It kind of signals that we're going more in the direction that kind of learning from this in a way where we've realized that maybe we're better off without that person if that's not already been mentioned before. So one of the things I really appreciated about this track is the confidence to have the first, X amount of seconds, like 10 or 20 seconds, or maybe was it like 20 seconds, have just the keys and the vocal chops. The reason being is that at this point we're very, comfortable with Hobokin and their style. To have the kind of upper range chops or the lady vocals on top is a nice sort of foil, a nice sort of twist. And it's a nice coloration and a very sort of refreshing, kind of fragrant high end in there. It sounds really pretty and peaceful, and it's a nice juxtaposition to what someone would typically, consider the resentment to be, if you know what I mean. It's kind of like a seductive, kind of like bait and switch. I think that it mirrors neatly the way that we approach the vocals here with the mixture of the 16th and then the triplet flow in some of those first sections here. Hobokin handles that well on a microphone. It's like a free-flowing kind of organic performance there where we're very sort of like comfortable taking our time to express the words in that way that we need to. But it's done so in a way where it almost seems like a conversation that we're having with someone else. And I think that this is more sort of like therapy for Hobokin, kind of figuring this stuff out as they go along. Sort of discussing, again, as I mentioned, like how they feel about this other person and it's sort of like working that out. And the music is so peaceful to listen to as well. It's got this kind of lo-fi ambience to it there. The extensions with the really sort of like soft, kind of gentle textures with the keys are phenomenal. And like the bass is nice and smooth and the low end is not aggressive and it's not kind of thick. It's just like thick and full, but it's not too full on there. And the drums are punchy, but they're not too sort of like intense. They sidechain neatly. There's a refreshing sort of flow to it that works well alongside the more sort of like hip hop rap kind of stylings, the contemporary stylings of like what Hobokin's doing on top. And it's another sort of like tool in the set, like another angle throughout this album. And I like the fact that we're using a whole lot of reverse takes with some of the vocal parts there, kind of bringing them in. In the previous track, we had some sort of like drum fills here, but we're using another sort of transitional device there. And just allowing ourselves to have room to use all these different sort of like ingredients just makes for a more interesting album, again, via variation. I know I'm a broken record with that kind of stuff, but you just cannot take it. You cannot overstate it. You just can't overstate how important it is to have like new interesting things. But I think knowing how to use those reverse takes and have things sort of like, again, flow between one another enhances the smoothness of the keys, the bass, drums, etc. The vocal performance not being too sort of harsh either, despite the negative feelings that we're dealing with. It's all very cohesive and well contained, and there's a chemistry between the elements, and it just makes this 2-minute 33 track flow by, especially again with those aforementioned sort of vocal drop and kind of like key oriented intros and outros there. We've just got a natural kind of bell curve, and it's really, I'd say this is probably one of the most effective tracks within this album. We got number 11, Curveball. This is a similar Similar, oh, chromatics.
I've been blind for weeks until an epiphany dawns on me. I've been fighting for you to see when I should have been fighting for me.
Dominant 7th chord.
Far too lenient with you. It should have been casual like a drive-through. Cause you're no 5-star quality meal, boo. I don't really know what I was trying to hold on to. When I get dressed like this, I shouldn't feel I'm dismissed. The girl in the square sun-kissed are now opportunities you missed. When I'm dressed to the nines, feeling out of
Those lead
place,
guitarists to sing coils are gorgeous
no
though.
excuse cause you're feeling fine. Don't be sad that I left you right here. Way out from your side view, I threw a curveball. Did that surprise you?
Interesting organ on the side there.
Way out of your prize pool, I threw a curveball like I was Pascal. And I've been wondering if we could take it from the top, because we always seem to move on, but we never seem to stop. And the picture's getting blurry, need enhancements or a crop. If we're going for the latter, then I guess you're getting chopped. I was sprinkling my seasons at the kitchen countertop. The coldest winter for the two of us, the food was extra hot. Now I'm sitting at the table all alone, the ticking clock. Now it's all just gotten chilly, made my heart a frozen stop. So what's the point of me staying here? I'll go. And what's the point of me calling up your phone? Asking how you're still 40 minutes on the road, and you say you're close, just 60 more to go. Excuses run so high, my tolerance is run dry. So I'll make a home run, fade out of your life. Cause now I'm sacrificing my sanity for your blatant obscurity of my role in full context to this false affinity.
Was that like a ball hit in like a baseball game or something? That kind of sound after the home run comment? Because if that's so, that's just fantastic use of Foley there.
Live in make believe, believing that I just concede. Trying to get the best of me, but I won't ever choose defeat. Your poison won't make me weak. Your perception is not concrete. I won't even let you blink, so trust me, I will make you see. Way out from your side view, I threw a curveball. Did that surprise you? And now I'm
Falsetto, great use of that.
out of your prize pool. I threw a curveball like I was Pascal.
Interesting use of chopping at the end there with that outro, the kind of atmosphere there. It's just a fun way to end things. You know, you get the summation of them, but then you got all those kind of glitchy textures, and you're like, what's going on? What's happening here? You know, it's just the little things. Okay, so that was Curveball, track number 11. Now, I think this song is about Hobokin realizing, hey, you know, we deserve better than this. And they discuss how they were cooking for two and ended up with one at home alone. And they're realizing that this person is not the catch that they thought they were, and they don't even necessarily know why they had feelings for them in the first place. So the curveball, the unexpected kind of flip on a, oh, I don't actually need you anymore. You know, this is not what I want anymore. I can be just fine on my own. And I suppose that is the inherent rebellion, isn't it, in a sense? I suppose Stockholm, going back from that, was feeling like you were stuck in a relationship with someone dragging you out of there. It's just, yeah, okay, I get the album a bit better now. It's a very intimate look into Hobokin's life, if this is to it, but like, I think that's where a lot of the best music comes from. So in terms of things that I think are done well here, one of the things that I think is handled well is the use of the stereo field. So there's just this fullness in the chorus parts with the different vocal layers and the organ on the side there. That it's just huge sounding, not overwhelming, but just it's very distinct from the verse parts where they're a bit more sort of like low key and more sort of like towards the center field, with the vocals being the focal point there. And it just helps to segment and differentiate parts of a track when you do stuff like pan them in different directions. It's all those, so things like the guitar riffs, you had them call and responding to each other. You'd have some sort of like strum parts on the left side there with those extended chords, the dominant sevenths and sevenths, major minor sevenths, and then you had yourself the lady parts there, and the guitar playing was exquisite. I appreciate the modal shifts there, the way we navigated with the hammer-ons and pull-offs and bends and little bits of vibrato and stuff like that. I think it was great. But it was also knowing to use the chromatics instead of like semitonal shifts and modulations there, going down, bow, bow, bow. It's stuff that in that kind of like jazzy lo-fi setting works really neatly, and it's effectively carved out here. It establishes a sense of complexity that matches, I think, maybe what we're trying to sort of discuss within the actual song itself, vocally. And like you have sung parts with some really fantastic falsetto, the upper range from Hobokin here. I do like the rap parts and the sung parts and how they're sort of very distinct, like A, B, A, B, etc. But I think a lot of the magic of this track comes from the way you have these sort of central themes established and fleshed out. And it was nice to have that interlude section near the end where there was like a different pathway with the bass lines there. Like there were some different chords there which were a little bit unusual, and it was a bit more sort of exploratory than maybe other tracks in this album so far. And you're kind of left there in like a kind of oh wait, what is this? What's happening? I think that was potentially done on purpose, because it goes back to that bow, 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 and you're going back into that hook line, and you're like, oh, we've found our footing here. We've found our anchor point. That's neat. So ultimately, I just think it's a mature, distinct track that sounds well on its own, is structured really neatly. The vocals on top are, again, well fleshed out there, and it's just a really great use of time and real estate there. I am appreciating these last few tracks in terms of the instrumental choices and stuff like that, even though I think it's totally reasonable to have a wide variety of elements in there. We've got Waves, track number 12. These reverbs are gorgeous, dude.
Can't break me, I've washed inside the flames, burning at my skin, forgot my name. The times inside the waves just aren't the same, because fire fills my lungs and pumps my veins. Emotions, can you make me feel the rush?
Sorry to interrupt. I'll go back so we can listen to the verse in full, but I just love, he talks about waves, and you kind of just get this rolling motion to the synths and pads in the background. It's just really well captured. Oscillations are welcome.
My mind is made so in love. Here in my heart wide open, I want to see it gush. My eyes go wide and a heart still pump. Can't break me, I've washed inside the flames, burning at my skin, forgot my name. The times inside the waves just aren't the same, because fire fills my lungs and pumps my veins. My fingers send just little.
You could have potentially added more 808s or bass in here a bit.
I can feel it. They don't understand my logic. They think I've gone insane. And I can't lie, I've thought the same.
Oh, there you go.
Back's a burden. We get more than we take. Trying was my worst mistake. So now I follow no path. Just gave up on the game. It must be true, I've gone insane. I tried to follow your voice and I ran into your sound, but it turned into white noise and it's haunting me I'd rather waste away, rather waste away. I'd rather waste away, rather waste away. Can't break me, I've washed inside the flames, burning at my skin, forgot my name.
Great use of delays as well.
Inside the waves just aren't the same. Because fire fuels my lungs and pumps my veins. Fire fuels my lungs and pumps my veins. Fire fuels my lungs and pumps my veins. So you can't break me, I've watched inside the flame. Can't break me.
No, I think that's really well done. It's a slower song, and there's a lot of it, but I think there's some really sort of like sensible decisions made here. So I think that Waves is more a track about having gone through hell on earth and coming out of it as a scorched human being who is kind of just, I suppose, they've met it. You know, like they have been overcome by these feelings, these emotions. They've been set on fire. You know, they've been lost in the ether, and they're just kind of, I suppose, potentially coming to terms with what's occurred there, for better or worse, almost becoming a little bit like melancholic to it, that they can't be broken by anyone else. And I think that's just a really interesting thought experiment at this point of the album. There were 3 tracks to go to get to a point where we've gone through the stages of grief on multiple levels and gone backwards and forwards, and we're sort of almost kind of accepting it in a sense. I may have completely misinterpreted, but that's my understanding of it. It's a track where effectively it is Hobokin expressing themselves, you know, vocally, singing, with the music washing over them. The oscillation of the synths does kind of remind me of waves kind of being lost in the ocean. You could have potentially have had water in there as like a vocal foley kind of like thing. But I think what is done instead is that you have these guitar layers, these reverbs and these delays and these echoes on the vocals and stuff. And the music it washes you. You know, it's soaked in these effects chains, and it's just so mesmerizing in how beautiful it is. Those guitar arpeggios there, the melodies that they play, the susses and ninths and all those really pretty chords with the upper register highlighted is just gorgeous. And I think that Hoboken sticking around a similar range is smart because it kind of helps it to float. When you do have that low mid bass come in, it warbles in the mix and it provides a ground bed for everything above it, but it's not too deep, it's not too intense. And the drums, when they come in, establish a flow, but there's also a lot of times where you just simply don't have that. It's almost like you're in stasis. You know, structurally, it's really neat in part because of the to and fro. It's kind of symbolizes, I think, the fact that they feel stuck, and when they are moving, it's like in a way where they can't be affected. So I think almost the way that it's played, with the choices, with the sounds of the instruments, combined with the structure being that to and fro across the 4 minutes, being, I think, well navigated and structured, despite it being vocal. Like it's a song where if you'd added more to it, it would have been too much, because I feel like things are laid out in a way where there's enough variety whilst also being easy to follow. You have Hoboken, you hear them speak their truth. You know they're struggling with this, but you can also kind of understand that if there was too much of a temper either way, or too much sort of like expression either way, it might sort of like betray the story that's being told. It's like being wrapped in a cozy blanket of confusion in a sense. But it is well produced. I think that the choices and the effects change there, allowing things to kind of be as lush as they are, is fantastic. And we have created another environment, a story where things make sense there, you know, aesthetically, in terms of the styling. It's smart. It's just finding that right amount of echo, that right amount of delay, or that right amount of reverb to sort of build anticipation whilst coding it really sort of like neatly. And so it's well, it's awesome. It's good stuff. I got coup d'etat. If I didn't mispronounce that.
Believed in lies I thought were golden. Cleaned their glasses and cheered to hoping it was real and was a dream. Now I know that all hearts chase the screams. I took a chance, I took your gamble. You came alive, Francisco Franco. Had my crown, wore down my arm, and then left me to rot. The Ricardo. My friends were close, but you stay closer. Sewn to my back and kept me sober. To learn that you still fed me poison. Dagger out, shiny and golden. Hidden in plain sight, a trick to my eye. Trojan horse, yourself to my life. Tainted all my diamond rings, so I'm left with rubies and crimson dreams. I'll crucify you, they'll all defy. You'll have no mercy even if I try to paint the ceilings and then the floors and string you like that's the core. You truly made me so unruly like Antoinette. They'll execute me but not before I get you back, cause I always go a tit for tat. Destroy my name and reputation. Told them lies, you've been so brazen so you can have your coup d'etat. Deliver you a nice coup de grace. And publicly they'll all despise me, never knowing what you were hiding. Your image fistingly squeaking clean while my neck is on the guillotine.
The fry, man, the intensity of the vocal chops, dude. That sizzle is phenomenal. I love how visceral it is. This was my murder, my execution. Even if I'm right, they'll still rebuke it. The holy martyr, the retribution. And if they speak, I'll still refute it. Their facts are farce, opinionated ruse. It's always one for pick and choose. Reality just won't hold sway. After all, it's just a puppet's game. They'll hold me to a different standard for saying that it never mattered. A device for more divide because I spoke against their lies. Don't be surprised that my words are hidden, inscribed in stones. Roman, Egyptian, they'll tell you that I caused fires. They burn my body at the pyre. Yeah, this is a really interesting track. Yeah, this is probably one of my favorites off of the song. It's just chock-a-block full of things included within it. Coup d'etat, I think it's about the rebellion, the being sort of put on trial for like a murder, the cloak and dagger kind of situation, and the retribution, I suppose, and the punishment after that, kind of dealing with other people's perceptions of what we're doing with others. I think after Waves, this is a really fascinating contrast. It's so short, at 2 minutes, it's so short, and you simply have 2 verses, A and B, and you're done. And that's excellent. I think that if you have every song within an album with the verses and choruses, it's totally valid. But to have a song occasionally where it is far more focused on simply being kind of like a run through, it's just tremendous here. It's cutthroat. It's incredibly intense with the delivery of some of those lines. It's not just the fact that it's structured really eloquently with the fantastic, like I'll talk about all the foley, the horses and the chains and the fire and the choir and everything like that chanting down to the ceremony. It's the fact that Hobokin just absolutely kills it on the mic there. I love how kind of like the aggression, just how raunchy and violent it is. It's just so, it makes so much sense with the subject matter there. With Waves, we were so much less involved, even though we were sort of like, with this, we're just full bore. And it just makes an album more interesting when you have that range. I don't think you could have improved on this, to be honest. It is fantastic. And it was musical at the same time. It wasn't overdone. It wasn't cheesy. It made sense within the context and the drama of the moment. And it was just, yeah, it was exciting. It was exciting. I think that's, just before we continue, I think excitement is something that we often take for granted with music, but honestly, you shouldn't. You really shouldn't. A lot of music sounds the same. It's nice to have a song kind of catch you by surprise. So I think, again, the vocals in this one were phenomenal. I think that the structure was fantastic. Probably this is one of my favorite tracks off of the album at this point. It's also that you had the sound of the horses, and you had the sound of the chains and the fire and the choir at the start counting down to the ceremony, and it was just so so imaginative and creative, and it really does sort of like expand the universe that Hobokin's created. It forces you to recognize that this is a musician who could continue to make music and do more stuff like this. And if they made an album where every song was as sort of like Loctite is this in terms of its approach. Not that I think that these tracks in this album are lesser, but just simply the it's cinematic, and just to be able to put all those different elements in, it's just an awesome effort. Like a effort, man. It's just, I got no complaints about this one. It's fantastic. I haven't even spoken about the music. You know, the piano playing, the sound of the drums, the bass, etc. is fantastic. But there's just so much else in there that elevates it, and so it's so awesome. Well done. We've got Bad Apples, number 14. Back to the lo-fi-ish elements. Oh. Very different to Coup d'etat. You can hear the vinyl crackle though.
Take away my rights, take away my freedom, right? But you should know that you can never take my fucking pride. They wanna start a war, taint and wipe away my mind, but I will never step down or take a chance and fight. They wanna throw me to the wolves, shut me in the shame. They wanna cover me in dirt, erase my fucking name. They wanna see me in the end lose my goddamn brain, so they can say because of him the people lost their way. Divide and divide, make them feel they can't survive. Sell them lies and hide the news, say it's just misunderstood and double down. Gaslight, say it's for the greater good. It's optional until we force, make the people all endorse. Cooperation is the goal, new order will begin. To not comply you'll lose your rights, not free to speak, not free to think. You deserve the worst things, including death of family, all your friends, all your pets, all your dreams and all the rest. Take all you've ever had, they'll tell people that you're bad cause you wanna hear their crap. And in fact they'll take it further, drag you straight to hell and back. Get you kicked off platforms if your opinion doesn't match, whether Hispanic, Asian, black. You've betrayed your people's back, and if you're white just say goodbye. They've already clocked the time, and in time you'll realize that just existing is your crime. You're not woke enough, you just spoke too much, then they'll blame your privilege, son. Guilty by association, emotions trumps our brain and patience. All this just to say they've got no tolerance for toleration. Bad apples poison nation, shadow ban our online spaces. Violence is a-okay if we don't hold their value virtues.
They just wanna hurt you. No, I like to urge you to just think, brush your blood, regurgitate my words to 'em.
You strip away my honor and slap me with the fine, beat me down, stomp me out, so now you can take away our rights, take away our freedom, right? But you should know that you can never take our fucking pride. They wanna start a war, taint and wipe away our minds, but we will never step down, we'll take a chance and fight. They wanna throw us to the wolves, shun us into shame. They wanna cover us in dirt, erase our fucking names. They wanna see us in the end lose our goddamn brains, so they can say because of them the people lost their way.
How do we take this one?
You people lost your way. You people lost your way. You people lost your way.
Yes, the Bad Apples is an interesting one. I'm going to check through the lyrics because I've got just by the way, there's like a Genius page that I'll include in the description. It has all the lyrics for this track if you want to check it out, for this album, should I say. So I think that this track, Bad Apples, is more of talking about like a broader concept about like people and sort of like cancel culture, but also talking about the rights that are taken away and stripped from us, our abilities to sort of be ourselves and have freedom. And it's a complicated topic, but then it's also not, because inherently people shouldn't really be taking away our ability to sort of like have freedom of speech, you know, providing we're willing to accept the consequences of what we say. And arguably as long as those consequences are reasonable, right? But there's like a lot of different implications, including political implications, especially nowadays, but also at any other point in time. I think that it's interesting when this track, The Rebellion, sort of like talk about a broader concept about the world around us, not just the person that we've had these feelings towards, or the people that we have these feelings towards, the entire world around us, instead of an us versus them mentality that I feel is explored quite well here within this. It's an interesting track, an interesting story, and you know what's done well here. I think that the way we have this really sort of like charming piano part at the beginning there with the twinkly keys with the vinyl scratch almost signals that this is like a tale as old as time, like an old-timey sort of like routine there where things haven't necessarily changed. We're kind of harkening back to a conversation we've been trying to have for like many, many years now. So I think that the nostalgic feel to that is fantastic. Bringing in the sort of like, with the reverse takes, the kicks and the bass, etc., and the cymbals kind of grounds it and works well with the rap flow that we have throughout. So I think the percussion is rational for this, But then we also like filter the percussion at some other parts as well to sort of add a bit of variety to the way that the track sounds here. And I think that that's important to sort of be able to change the way things sounds to segment. It just makes it sound a bit fresh. Like it's a way of not having to change the drum beats too much. Because otherwise, if you have the same kit the entire time, you have to do different things in order for it to be sort of like, you can lose interest if things are too similar. But I think the heaviness of the percussion underlies the heaviness of the message that we're describing. And I think Hobokin here communicates and navigates the topics quite well there. It's clearly something that they're quite passionate about. And I think that with the piano contrasting neatly with the severity of the percussion here, you've got enough going on within the backing arrangement for Hobokin to have flexibility there. And there are some interesting sort of like distorted synths as we go along around the part where we talk about it being like covered in dirt and everything like that. It's horrific stuff there. And those dissonant textures kind of work well with the audacity and the horror of some of the stuff that we're discussing. There's connection there. But then we also have like modulated vocals and vocal chops there, which harken back to other parts of the album as well. We've clearly got like a set of instruments that we're kind of bring back and forth throughout a lot of these tracks, not all the time, but in bits and pieces. And so it combines this track and sort of puts it and connects it to a lot of the other tracks within the album, whilst also meeting the needs of what we describe or what we need in terms of this track to kind of keep things sounding engaging throughout and not having things too similar. But I think finally, before we move on, the thing that's done well here is it allows Hobokin to not need to do too much in terms of various melodies on the microphone there. When you've got these other elements within a mix, handling things within the frequency spectrum and the stereo field there, you simply need Hobokin to be a bit more sort of like forthright and sort of straightforward. And we have that here, it's easy to follow along with the flow of what's being put out. And, it's not, even though it's kind of like there's a heaviness and sort of darkness to the subject matter, it's not too overwhelming there. You just kind of need to take your time and think about it for a bit to sort of fully sort of like, take it in. And there's like an interesting sort of like siren at the end to kind of like show a sense of danger or that things are about to be sort of taken over. I just think, again, just as a closing comment, it's just kind of neat how this is followed on from Coup d'etat, where it's a very different style to that track, but it's almost like we're trying to have different genres per track after each other. But then there have been some other songs where they have been similar one after the other, like 11 and 12, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or 10 or 11. I just think we're very deliberate and focused about the kind of feel that we want each track to have, and it needs to really match the lyrics. So that's a fundamental part there that's handled. But I fear that I'm at the part of the album where I'm rambling, so thankfully we have one more track to go with Armageddon. I think this one also...
Redemption arcs, my structure's torn apart, and let's just face it, we might not make it. They've commenced annihilation onto our characters. Don't question no one word. And by the nation, your deviations, guilty by association. If you counter what they preach, they'll brand it all as just hate speech. Sing your death threats, take your assets, destroy you as a fatal lesson.
They'll call on grounds of treason, falsifying every reason. Speaking out of line, grants you that fine. They'll be sure that you do the time.
The phoenix flies through polluted skies and turns to ash at his demise. But when there's death, it rebirths life. We all live to get to the other side.
Just like living relics, some be cursed and some angelic. Staggered so full of panic when it's the rebellion, the Armageddon.
And so we fight it within our reasons we die.
Cause nothing's black and white. There's no real wrong or right. So we fight
and choose our sides. Raise your knife and I'll raise mine. And I won't regret it when it's the rebellion or Armageddon. Won't you save me? I need some saving.
They hate me.
Yeah, I like.
They wanna hang me.
I mean, like, I'm surprised by this direction at the end there, but like, I kind of enjoy that we're making it unpredictable with the thematic direction. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ethan Marc is involved with this one as well.
It's sad the way we die. Blood red tears drip from our eyes. Losing sight that there are never any reasons for the riots.
But now we're in a fight, a battle for our lives. The ones who justify the lies, and the ones who will defy.
Won't you save me? I need some saving.
They hate me, they wanna hang me.
Oh, we've even filtered in changing the flow of those sub-layer synth sequences.
Why won't you save me?
Oh, harmonies, filtered harmonies in the sides.
Why won't you save me? Why won't you save me? Grant no redemption arcs. My structure's torn apart. Let's just face it, we might not make it. They've commenced annihilation onto our characters. Don't question not one word. And by the nation, your deviations, guilty by association.
No, no, guilty by association.
And by the nation, your deviations.
Guilty by association. No, no, guilty by association.
And I won't regret it when it's the rebellion or Armageddon.
Okay. Alright, I see how things are. Okay, that's neat. I dig it. Okay, cool, I get it. This is an interesting way. Although it's an undecided way to finish the album. Okay. I'm not sure how to approach this one. I mean, I'm gonna probably save my confusion for the overall conclusion of this album, because this is kind of taking a bit of a turn, but I think that Armageddon is more, if we take it literally, it's more sort of talking about the reality that their world is being destroyed. The Armageddon, you know, their rebellion, they're trying to find their own sort of voice and peace within the world, and I realize maybe they've been lulled into a false insecurity by the universe around them. And now the forces are coming down on them and they're sort of discussing this. And there is a sad, sort of like mournful resentment to this entirely. But I think one thing that's handled well is how Hobokin and Ethan Marc work together. It's nice to have them a bit more sort of active than in the previous track. I think it was Breaking Down, where I think that Ethan might have had a part a bit later in the track, had their own sort of like interlude part. Armageddon, it's far more involved. They're kind of feeding off of each other and there's a great sort of chemistry between the two of them. And I think that's really important because it shows that Hobokin can allow another musician alongside them to have far more sort of like feel and control and agency within a track. And it is nice to have multiple perspectives on it, kind of feeding off each other. Their voices work well with one another when they're together. They also are distinct enough to be separate. And it just makes the track a little bit more sort of like unpredictable when there's those accompaniments there. I think another thing that works within this track is just simply the culmination of the tone of the drums, as well as the rhythm there with the flow of the 16/8 and sort of syncopated parts, as well as the on-beat accents, and the production value of it. So I think it's kind of like it's a weird thing to talk about multiple things with one instrument, but the actual groove of the kit was just so entrancing. Like, it's just so easy to nod your head and kind of like bolt along with it. And it's one of those songs where it's dangerous because you just kind of find yourself nodding along to things regardless of what they're talking about there. It's just a hell of an effort in terms of the production there. I just appreciate the flow, the polish of the sound of the actual kit there, and the way that it sets a scene and precedent for whatever they're discussing. And it definitely does sound like there is a tension and drama to it. There are these kind of like unresolved chords within the last part of every sort of like loop there, which seem like something terrible or something awful is going to happen, or it has happened there. And like it's almost like a funeral march for it, but we're still kind of like striving forward there. It's like a mixture of we've had a horrific thing happen with we're going to fight against this to the teeth. But it's also got a sort of a more modern polish to it with the use of the sequences, that kind of sparkly thing, making this almost seem like more of a futuristic modern struggle that we're having here. There's great use of filtering on certain elements, as well as those kind of vocal takes in that interlude section there that went out to the side with the automation, the padding there. It just shows a great sort of awareness of how the thing's moving in a track. And the overall sort of like theme wasn't overcomplicated. It's just an example of how to make a genuinely catchy track there, which I think is it's an important decision here. I think, like you can have a sense of like purpose and character within a track, but if you ignore the fundamentals of trying to make a song like that people want to sort of have re-listen value to, you're just kind of screwed. So we tick off all the boxes there. I think the fact that you leave it not necessarily sure where you're at after listening to the album is kind of a positive thing in a sense, because it is less expected and it's like a novelty, I suppose. I hear this and I think, is this entire thing been the Armageddon? Has this thing been leading up to the rebellion? When the album ends, does something else continue? Is there a different chapter? And so I think listening to this album for Hobokin, it's like, what are they going to do next? And you're not sure about it. But I think, just as a closing comment, just to go back to the vocals, I think that Ethan, Marc, and Hobokin sung really well here, and they had similar approaches to the way that they sung. I think that shows a respect for each other, as well as an awareness that if they're too distinct, it can be a little bit like off-putting and sort of confusing for listeners. And it's just having an attention to detail there and a mutual focus that makes a collaboration really effective. And it kind of brings in an interesting sort of like angle of, is this Ethan's Armageddon as well? Because for this entire album, it's been Hobokin's, but is there more going on? How many people's Armageddon is it? But we're going to talk about this album more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my review of this album from an act named Hobokin, titled The Rebellion. Now, we have listened to all 15 tracks within this album, from Bubble Blowing Babies all the way through to Armageddon, and it has been a hell of a ride. I'll be honest, I'm not really sure how to pitch it, how to take it, how to interpret it. On one hand, I think it's about someone kind of coming off of their life initially, maybe being a little bit sort of like kind of growing up, realizing they have to leave a situation, coming to terms with the position they're in, and sort of like trying to find their place in the world, going on a journey, going on a train, etc., like trying to find a ticket at the station. And they meet some people, and those people take them for a ride, and they eventually get to a point where, hey, maybe they're stuck in a position that is completely undesirable, and that destroys them. And so I think inevitably or invariably they get to a point where they get to an understanding, a distance from that person, to realize how they don't need them anymore. But they realize, actually, hang on, the world is against me. I'm having a terrible time with this. And they're looking at how people have thrown them on the bus, and they're looking at some sort of rebellion, some ability to sort of like not only have confidence, but to be assertive and sort of speak up for ourselves and fight back against those that try to silence us. I think that's kind of the story with this. And if I'm completely honest with you, it's one of the most intricate tales that I've heard within an album in my time reviewing music. It really is. I could not have known what we were getting into at the start, but I have to hand it to Hobokin. It did have its twists and turns, and I that is really impressive. I am genuinely impressed with the storytelling within this. I may have also completely misinterpreted it, and either way it was cool to listen to. So I've spoken about each of the 15 tracks within their individual mini conclusions, so I'm not going to go into excruciating detail here. I'm just going to talk about 3 main areas that I feel were done within this album, as well as any applicable constructive critique, and then we'll basically be sorted. So one of the things I think is done well here are the vocals. Now, Hobokin being the main focal point of this, very comfortable in their lower range, in their mid-head chest voice range, in their occasional falsetto voice. They had interesting sort of vocal chops and lady vocals and other elements as well. Those vocal chops were sort of synthesized elements being placed in various tracks there. Some of the songs, even like like Resent, if I'm not mistaken. Like they were like focal points of the piece, and they were alternate leads to what Hobokin was doing. Like it's just great to have so many different ways of communicating the audience. And we also had Ethan and Marc come in for their parts with great solid vocal technique. But I want to give a shout out to Hobokin because he delivers these lines really neatly. There is a wide range. There is drama within this. There are songs like Waves where like things are a lot more sort of like not low key, but a lot more sort of like restrained, and then we immediately go into Coup d'etat where it's just raucous and it's vitriolic and it's just really heavy. And I love that Hobokin has that range. It's not just that we can sing well and we can hit the notes that we need to and we can harmonize and we can do all these sort of things. We have that self-awareness within both our vocal performance and in our composition and mix in general. And we have like kind of reversed vocal takes, now sort of transitional devices and echoes and reverb tails and all sorts of fun things there. Our lead is fleshed out. It's that we do it in a way where it's exciting and it's engaging and it's like more than simply just a competent technical performance. It's an adventure, and you just come out of it maybe not necessarily understanding everything that's going on, but you definitely feel like you listen to someone's story and all the different angles of it. So I mean, I feel like this is one of the most charismatic albums I've listened to in a while from a vocal performance perspective. And the cherry on the top is that I don't think there were any tracks within this album where I feel like it was lacking. It wasn't always on the beat, but that's not a criticism. It's okay for things not to be absolutely on the beat all the time. It can be a bit more sort of like free flowing and organic. There can be more of a conversational kind of tone to some of the spoken rap parts as well. When it needed to, it was percussive and on point as hell. It was accented, it was dope. The collaboration we had with Ethan and Marc, especially with Armageddon, was fantastic. It's great that Hobokin could allow Ethan to have their time in the sun, have their own interlude section and like, breaking down, but then to have them kind of feed off of each other. That just really, it's astute. It's really effective. So the vocals were a highlight of this album for me. I also think in general, the production was. So I appreciate the quality of the performance in terms of like the recording. There are the vocals that were nice and clean. There were some like multiple effects chains in there, some sort of like synthesized kind of like modulated parts there, echo and reverb tails there. Things were nicely niched in the frequency spectrum, not just with the vocals though, from like the various guitar, bass, track, key, string, all of those, all the various instrumental elements within the track there, almost always were like fantastically leveled there. There were some sort of like glitchy elements in some tracks and interesting outros. We had dynamic range to it. Things were not too squished. It had life and it was vivacious. We had some sort of like fade outs occasionally. There were some tracks which just ended abruptly. There was no moment where I could expect anything less but polish with the production, and that's what you need from an album, because these days people can be so impatient. They just want to they expect a certain quality, and we delivered it here, you know. And I just think that, no resonant frequency in the stereo field there, on the frequency spectrum, should I say. And Hobokin did not need assistance with that voice. They could just clearly sing, and same to Ethan, Marc, and everyone else involved. It was fantastic. No complaints. So I think the production was tight, nice and loud without pumping. And so I think the final thing I'll say, I think even though there are a lot of really cool instrumental parts there with lots of really intriguing, it's just too difficult to summarize them in one sort of statement because there's so many different sort of like styles and genres included within the album. Not massive shifts or changes. Like it's not like we went from like a country track to like grindcore or something like that. But like there was just so many sort of like little like nuances and subgenres. It's like things indicated that I think to try and sort of say I liked how the guitars, it'd just be a little bit too simplistic. So I want to talk about the structure of it. I think that the structure of these tracks was typically just absolutely on the money. Some songs were 2 minutes and they went in and out. Like in Coup d'etat was a personal favorite of mine. The use of the Foley within that was fantastic with the horses and everything like that. There was also like Curveball where we like hit a home run. There were parts where we had Foley when we needed to between vocal parts. It was cool and responses. But we layered tracks. Sometimes we had a whole lot of instruments with the bass drums, vocals, multiple takes and everything. Sometimes we just had vocal chops and keys for 20 seconds. Each track had its own sort of like identity, and it was distinct from the other whilst also sounding within the same album, not just because of the production and the vocal technique, but it's also because like it was never too experimental. There was like a measure and a restraint whilst there was enough variety compositionally. There was a restraint. I think that if we tried to do too many different structures for these tracks, it would have been a bit alienating on top of everything else. So we handled things well. There was no filler within these. There were no moments where we had too much of something. I think there were some moments where I could have personally preferred there to be an additional sort of like lead element on top or something like that. But like aside from that, it's almost like a vocal it's vocal oriented, like it's totally fine. And again, Hobokin was doing enough on the microphone to be able to justify their place being the main sort of element there. So ultimately, I think that structurally, just to have these songs be as fleshed out as they are, I've said fleshed out a lot, as well-rounded as they are, to have less when it was required, to have things like the drums not be there when they needed to allow things to float in the ether, such as with waves and other tracks, but to have things be free-flowing and full and just command these different tracks neatly, it's just effective. And you do typically on an album have one or two songs where things are a little bit off, just simply because it might seem a bit like sort of alien, but I don't think we had that here. In terms of like constructive critique on this album, I don't really have any. I think that this is more of a unique approach to making a record that I would need to sort of hear another one of Hobokin's albums or works in this kind of scale to make context of it. But I think in isolation, it's really well handled. I don't think there are any fundamentals that are not adhered to here. Ultimately, this is simply their pure creative artistic expression there. And the most I could say is potentially that I'm not necessarily sure what the album is about, but then I've had a go at it and I've had my clue. And I also think that it's okay not to be fully acutely aware of what's going on. It's as much as the musician wants to let you in. So ultimately, I did enjoy my time with this. Again, I think Coup d'etat was probably my favorite, but there are other tracks I enjoyed, as well as Resent and other parts, and Take You for a Ride was really cool. Again, I remember reviewing that from previously, and I don't always remember tracks I've heard in the past, so it's nice to be able to have that moment. That's compliment to Hobokin. But there's my review of this album from an axe named Hobokin titled The Rebellion, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and their Spotify page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.